Hey guys, TRScientist here, and today we're at the grand finale of r/NuclearRevenge. That's right, we are on day 30, and considering this is all going up in November, the last day of NuclearRevenge. And, well, I'm ending it where I started it, with rap. First story, serial date rapist gets the smackdown he deserves. TL summary. When a dear friend fell victim to a serial date rapist, I get him arrested for drug trafficking with unintended consequences more dire than I had planned. Justice. When people ask, what's the worst thing you've ever done? My mind instantly loads the following story into memory, but I've never shared it until now. Obligatory background. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest to an entertainment industry family. I spent a lot of my formative years on the road touring. It was a deceptively conservative life. When I was around 8 or 9 years old, I witnessed a jazz sax player from a band that my dad had booked shoot up and drop dead. This really drove home, just say no. High school straight shooter. I played music all through school and started working professionally at a young age. I was pretty much straight edge until college. I got around to reading some Hunter S. Thompson and decided that a bong hit wasn't going to kill me. A few years out of school, around 1991, I started a small indie dance label and recording studio. This was back before every kid with a laptop could record in their bedroom. Anyhow, my company HQ became a favourite hangout for local rave promoters and club kids. I became pretty well connected in that scene. I started experimenting with more and more types of party drugs and subsequently found myself with friends who were either major dealers or dealer adjacent. Untouchable. In this clique, there were 3 or 4 dudes who would be considered douchebags. You know the type. Fake tans, steroids, bleached hair, nice cars, etc, etc, etc. There was one dude in particular whom I always got a bad vibe from. As a young man in my 20s, I liked as much as the next guy, if not more. But even when I was out clubbing looking to get laid, I never pushed my agenda. Never used coercion, guilt, etc. to manipulate a woman into bed. If I spent $300 on dinner, I never felt like they owed me something. The only expectation I had was, if you make the date, show up. Which is just good manners. Anyhow, back to the douchebag. Let's call him Tyler. This guy had a great sense of humor, the kind of good looks that make straight boys say, damn! Money and a politically connected family. During the time I owned my label, I also played at jazz clubs in our city. One of the venues was this really cool martini bar. One of the bartenders was this super cute, bubbly, bright, and just downright fun girl. I met her in the rave scene, but got to know her through my jazz gig. She was super flirty, but was super old-fashioned. But I'm not saying she was waiting for marriage, but close. She had grown up in a really small town and never really encountered bad people in her daily life, so she was quite trusting. This all changed when she was date-raped by Tyler. He played long con with this lovely human being. She had very little experience with drugs, and when she went out with him, he got her whacked out on MDMA, did some pretty messed up things to her, had a buddy take photos, and violated her too. She was never the same after that. PTSD, self-loathing, depression. It was as if he killed her. Turn the other cheek, my ass. I'm loving these, like, in the middle titles. Tyler told her that she had blacked out and didn't remember being into it. I peppered her with the typical bullshit along the lines of, I didn't have to rap anybody, I get all the girls I want. Along with, nobody will believe you, and even if they did, there's no way I'll get arrested, etc, etc, etc. Personally, I was bullied a lot as a kid, and I can take a lot of short and not blink an eye. But when somebody hurts somebody I care about, I tend to lean toward asymmetrical reasons. Ironically, Tyler was not a consumer of drugs nor excessive alcohol. This factors into things later. I spoke to 2 people about my plan. One was a major drug trafficker, the other was a member of the state law enforcement. The Cliff Notes version of the retribution was, I purchased about $3,500 worth of heroin in prepackaged, ready for retail baggies. I also got about 10 sheets of really powerful blotter acid. Tyler was attending a birthday party at a restaurant where I knew the valet staff really well. Not that well, but I always wanted an over-the-top kind of tipper. They knew me, they knew I knew Tyler, etc. I told him I wanted to pull a prank on him and put something in his car. I slipped the guy a C note and told him it was harmless and wouldn't come back on him. So he agreed, but I put the contraband under his passenger seat, gave the keys back and took off. Springing the trap. Tyler was a creature of habit and always took the same route home. My friend, the state trooper, didn't know what I was up to. I simply told him this dude hangs around my circle of friends, was becoming a major drug dealer and putting my friends in danger. I told him where and when and left him to his own devices. Around 1:20 a.m., Tyler gets pulled over and my friend does a DUI check. Tyler went ballistic because he was stone cold sober. The trooper asks if he can search the car. Tyler agrees because he knows his car is clean. He gets arrested for possession intent to distribute, and the legally concealed weapon or pistol in his car didn't help either. He fought the law. If he hadn't been such an unfestered a-hole, he would have gone away with no jail time, but he was disrespectful to the judge and got 18 months in prison. Not jail, prison. He really was a moron. Instead of keeping his head down, shutting the hell up, and doing his time, he acted like a horse's ass and ended up getting killed. I didn't mean for the revenge to go that far, but I don't feel remorse for how things played out one bit. I hope his rapist ass rots in hell. Damn. He actually got killed for his in prison or something? Like, wow. That is just crazy. But we're probably not as crazy as the top story of r/NuclearRevenge. Tries to drug and rap an innocent girl at a party? No, not while I'm here. First story, taken down from Pro-Revenge because of a ban on felonies. Tell me if that's not allowed here. Also, long and graphic, so skip if you're not comfortable. TLDR at the bottom. So, to put it simply, I was a little short as a kid. I used to steal from stores and family, swear and throw things at random people walking down the street, was smoking from the age of 12, and didn't give a shit about anyone but my friends. They were my real family. Or so I thought, and the group of all 5 of us would cause trouble every single fucking day. My parents, though in my later years, have told me they should have been more effective in their discipline, really weren't to blame. I was just a mixed up kid. I used to think that doing all this stuff made me cool. I can't really describe how superior I felt when I made grown adults afraid of me, but it made me feel powerful, and the power was something I craved when I was younger. I could go on and on about my sins, but the fact is, I was just forked in the head. I've made amends where I can to who I could, but not here for self-flagellation. You're here for the revenge. So long story short, I was 16. My parents finally had enough. And despite all my tantrums and screaming and even some physical violence against my dad, they decided to put me in a school for troubled youth. I call it a school, but what it really was a military institution that taught discipline in the most brutally effective ways while throwing in some literacy and numeracy classes along the way. Without going into too much detail, I'll say this school changed me. While aggressive, violent, cocky, and near homicidal when I was first dumped on their doorstep, the men who ran this camp broke me down. I was there for just over a year. No phone calls, no visits home, no access to the outside world. For 1 whole year, I had this camp and these counselors, these real-life hard-ass men, teach me just how much of a short stain I really was. By the end of my second summer, I was a changed kid. I had fought and screamed and gotten my ass kicked more times than I can count, but eventually I was beaten down. These men taught me that real men simply don't act the way I did, and that the type of path I was headed down would lead me either in jail or dead. They were brutally honest about it, especially this one counselor, Jay. By the end of my stay, I considered Jay a second father. Though I hated him at first for making me feel inferior, he really did me a favor, teaching me how toxic my behavior was, and to this day I still think of him as something of a hero. He was the main person who deemed me ready to return home. But the backstory is getting really long, so let's get to the real story. When I returned home, I had changed from an abusive little prick to a somewhat civilized young man, ready to take on my last year of high school. I was nervous to go back, since I had adapted to the disciplinary school lifestyle, but I was also excited. I missed my friends, and hoped they would just accept me back despite the fact I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. And to my relief, I was accepted back with open arms. One of my closest friends had moved states since I'd been away, but the other three were ecstatic to see me. Over the next few weeks, I settled down. I didn't spend a lot of time with them outside of school. My parents were kind of testing how much I matured since returning, and were setting boundaries on when I could go out, how long I could stay out, and where I could go, etc. I was determined to prove to them I wasn't the same fuck-up that had ruined their lives all those years, so I followed their rules, and so only really talked to my friends during school. All of this is relevant because of what happened next. I had joined the school football team all three friends were a part of, and one evening after practice, all my teammates were in the gym, sweaty and dirty, but pleased with ourselves. I was laughing and chatting with my three best friends, so much that I didn't really notice that we were the last left in the gym. But that's when the conversation started turning bad. One of my friends, I'll call him F1, a friend one for simplicity, started telling me about a college party they were all planning on going to, and how they'd been crashing college parties for a few months now. Said it was easy access to girls and booze. I was hesitant about it because I didn't think my mum and dad would agree to let me go, but then F1 started talking about this girl he was planning on inviting. A girl who went to the same school as us, but not one I thought F1 had any real relationship with. I knew her, but I didn't know her. He started to tell both my other friends and me that he'd been trying to get her into bed for a while. She kept making excuses, so he planned on taking her to the party and finally smashing. When I asked him, in a joking way, "What makes you so sure she won't reject you again?" he looked me dead in the eye and said as casually as you please, the most chilling sentence I have ever heard in my life. "I'm just gonna slip something in the drink. It'll loosen her up. No problem." At first, I just kind of awkwardly laughed, thinking it was some forked up joke, but they weren't laughing with me. When I asked him if he was serious, he told me he was sick of her bullshit games and knew she was just stringing him along, and that the pills would just make things easier. I could not believe my fucking ears. I excused myself from the conversation pretty quickly and practically bolted home, most likely driving through several stop signs, but I really don't remember. I spent the whole night convincing myself my friends were just messing around. A few more days and the conversation in the locker room is all but forgotten, though they hadn't shut up about the party, and kept insisting that I just sneak out and join them. I got called a pussy for repeatedly for telling them I wasn't going because of my parents, but again, I just brushed it off. Then the short finally hits the fan. During yet another after-school training session, we all end up the last in the lockers, and F1 does something I would never have expected. I never would have expected in 1,000 fucking years. All three of them have been talking about the party this whole time. Then F1 starts rummaging through his gym bag. He tells us all to look at this, and tosses F2 a small bag of little pink pills. Immediately I feel the blood drain from my face, and like a bomb is going off in my head, a voice in my mind is screaming, "Holy short, this is really happening, this is serious, holy fucking short. Holy fucking short." It's really hard to describe what I was feeling when F1 started going into detail about how he planned on inviting the girl to a party, slipping something into a drink, and making use of one of the frat boys' bedrooms for a few hours. I was sick. Like, literally could have hurled everything from my stomach all over the floor as I listened to all three of them talk about how awesome the party was going to be after just describing how they were planning to rap a girl. I couldn't take it, and again I ran off. I actually did end up puking later that night, going over and over in my head what the fuck I had just witnessed. I almost couldn't believe it. These three boys had been my friends for 15 years. I thought of them as my own family. I thought I knew them better than anyone, but 1 year away, and this? I'll tell you that I actually broke down crying that night. I'm not ashamed to admit it. What I am ashamed of is how long I took to actually get a grip and handle it. I knew I should have told someone, but in some forked up way, my loyalties were still screwed. Don't crucify me for it. I know now what I should have done, but I was 17, and these were my best friends. I didn't want them to get into trouble, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't let this short go down. So instead of reporting all I heard to an adult like a normal fucking human, I decided I'd sort it out all on my own. So I went to F1 and told him not to do what he had planned. Told him it was stupid and dangerous and would ruin his life and the life of the girl he was planning on drugging. He didn't even blink. He got right in my face and told me that the school I got sent to had turned me into a pussy. That he hated how much I'd changed and had been trying to change me back with F2 and F3. He even told me how they'd been talking about me behind my back and how they planned to give me a turn on the girl once F1 was done with her, just to show me what I was missing out on. Then he said something I'll never forget. He told me, word for word, "I'm doing that little beach a favor. She's a fucking virgin, and after this party, your mum won't be the only one finally getting some." I punched him. We fought, and we both got sent home on suspension for fighting. I could not fucking believe it. I was seething. My best friend had said that to me. My best friend had told me he was going to rap an innocent girl at a party, and I was a pussy for not wanting to join in. I was disgusted, sickened to my core, and I was done with him. My parents were disappointed I had gotten suspended so shortly after coming home, but I just sat quietly while my mum cried and my dad screamed at me. I know now that I should have told him, but after what F1 said, I had this insane notion in my head that I was going to get him back all on my own. And now, to the revenge. After a weekend of being grounded, I went back to school, and the first thing I did was seek F1. He was about as bashed up as I was, but he was sporting a nice black eye from where I hit him in the face. F2 and F3 were standing with him, and they all glared at me as I approached him. Then I did something that made me feel sick. I apologized to him. I told him I was sorry I hit him, and that he was right. I had changed, and I hated what that school had done to me, and I wanted to go back to being the old me again, and surprisingly, they all bought it. F1 and I even hugged it out, and I put the cherry on top when I told them I'd be coming to the party. Now for my dumbass teenage plan. First, I started recording them whenever we were alone together. I wanted to get everything they said about the party and the girl they were planning on victimizing on tape. I knew I needed some kind of proof, or it would be my word against theirs. And after a few days, I had gotten more than enough, but I wasn't done. No, my stupid self had a plan, and I was going to fulfill it to the fullest. So the next thing I did was track down the girl, take her aside, and tell her everything. She was peeved and scared, but I begged her not to go to the police or tell anyone. I know now that was stupid as well, but for some reason she listened to me. I had a plan. A crazy, stupid plan to teach them all a lesson. So I told her to tell F1 that she was going to meet him at the party, but to just stay home so she could stay safe. Later that day, F1 started bragging about how the girl had accepted his invitation and everything was going to plan. I sat there, phone half out of my pocket, recording the whole damn thing. So the day of the party finally rolls up around, and I sneak out because, I was grounded. I think it's worth mentioning that I wasn't filled with vindication and self-righteousness throughout the whole night. I was second-guessing myself. I had doubts, but in some strange way, I felt betrayed. These 3 boys had been my brothers since before I could throw a punch, and I felt betrayed that they had gone down this road. What forked me in the head even more was the possibility that I might have been just like them if my parents hadn't sent me away. It was a strange moment of realization to come to in the middle of a crowded frat house surrounded by drunk idiots, but you take what life throws at you. So the night goes on, and F1 is getting steadily more frustrated that the girl he invited had shown up. I'd made sure to keep him in my sights for the whole night, not wanting him to decide that any old girl would do if he couldn't take the one he wanted. I kept an eye on all of them, watching as they drank and drank, while I stayed as level-headed as possible with some water in a beer can. When midnight came, all 3 of them were plastered, and I knew that all the girls at the party would be safe by then. By this time, the crowd was dying down, and a few people who couldn't hold their liquor were already passed out around the house. Now was my time to shine. While all 3 of them were occupied with a drinking game, I hunted in F1's bag and found a bag of little pink pills. Here's where I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but I'll tell you anyway. I slipped 1 pill into 3 beers each and handed them to my friends. And then waited. It didn't take long before all 3 were passed out on the floor, along with quite a few other party guests. I then took a black permanent marker pen from my bag and wrote rapist on all 3 of their foreheads, took pictures and immediately uploaded them to our school's Facebook page, so everyone who attended our school would see. Admittedly, I didn't think this part through, since I not only did this in full view of every other conscious person at the party, but also knew the photos wouldn't last long on the school site before they would be taken down. But since it was a small school in a small town, I didn't doubt that a whole bunch of people would see it before a teacher removed the photos, and that's exactly what I wanted. Next came the recordings. When I got home, I got a verbal bludgeoning from my parents for sneaking out, but they stopped when I finally told them what had been happening. They were both shocked and a little disbelieving, but when I played them both the recordings I saved on my phone, they were just as sickened as I was. I was silent in the car as my dad drove me to the police station, receiving a lecture about how I should have just come to him in the first place, and what I'd done at the party wasn't necessary. But it felt like it was at the time. My phone had already blown up with other students commenting on the pictures of my 3 ex-friends with rapist written on their foreheads. And while a lot just laughed at them, many were questioning if there was any truth to it. It was what I wanted. I wanted everyone to know who they really were, so they had nowhere to hide. The hours at the police station were admittedly very scary. I was still debating with myself whether or not I did the right thing, but my friends had chosen their own fate. I still felt hurt and betrayed. They allowed themselves to become this way, and even though I felt a little guilt for potentially ruining their future, I did what I thought had to be done. And long story short, the recordings were enough to get them all on charges for planning to commit a crime. Since the girl F1 had been planning on drugging had been named, her parents were understandably furious and demanded all 3 of my ex-friends be arrested. I would have been too, if were it not for the girl telling her parents and the courts that I had warned her to stay away from F1 and the party. I was charged for my use of an illegal substance, since I admitted to using the pills on my 3 ex-friends, and also for battery, since the permanent marker was seen as a form of assault, but luckily I never got jail time. I did get a boatload of community service though. All 3 of them were tried as adults in a case of attempted rap, but only F1 got actual jail time, since he was the only one who'd gotten the pills and was the only one who admitted to wanting to use them. The other 2 only got probation and community service for being accessories, but they were completely shunned in our town. No one ever let them forget. I was prepared for the backlash, ready to be jumped by them or something, but strangely enough, I think seeing F1 go to jail for what he did knocked some sense into the 2 of them, and they wised up enough to actually get into college without football scholarships, since they were both kicked off the team. They never came anywhere near me again, which surprised me, but I no longer cared. In my mind, my friends were dead to me long before all this went down, and by the time I moved away to college, it was all behind me. I'm in my final year of college now, and I still think about those 3 sometimes. I think about how if my parents hadn't sent me to that special school, I may have ended up just like them. Oddly enough, I do miss them at times, but I know it's the memory of the kids I miss, not the men they turn into. I've thanked my parents continuously for sending me to that place, and even got some approval from Jay when I felt man enough to tell him what happened. I don't know what will happen to F1 when he gets out of jail, but a part of me hopes he learns his lesson and moves on with his life like I have. Jay called me a few days ago just to check up, and I told him this whole story, which is kind of why I'm now telling the internet. I guess the moral is to stand up to your friends when you know they're doing something wrong, but maybe not in the stupid way I did it. Always involve others more qualified to deal with situations you're not sure about, even if you're a headstrong, stubborn as fuck teenager who thinks you know everything. TLDR, 3 old friends of mine plan to rap a girl at a party, so I expose them to the whole town and get one friend thrown in jail. Oh my gosh. Should I read the update? Okay. To all of you asking if the girl in the story and I became friends, well, sadly no. We talked a lot during the court case and after, but we never really developed a friendship. I think we were both too embarrassed over everything, so we just went our separate ways and remained civil in school. 2. For everyone questioning why I sound British, all I can say is, wow. I'm used to people picking up on it in person, but not through writing. Some of you guys must be secret geniuses. My father is British, his whole family lives over there, and we visit a lot. And his family is about as British as they come. And a little piece of side information, I was actually born in Britain, 6 weeks premature, but I was raised in America. For everyone asking about Jay, well, he's great. A great man who's gone through a lot in his life too. He's lost his son to drugs, which is why I kind of think he made it his job to look out for boys like me, just to make sure no other parent goes through what he did. His reaction to what happened was to basically call me an idiot for all the crap I pulled, but he was proud I didn't forget everything I learned from the moment I got home. He also told me that he'd like for me to come to speak at the school next summer, just to tell some of the new boys coming in how bad things can get if you refuse to change the way you live. If I ever strike it rich, I'll be giving the school a massive donation. For everyone asking where this happened, for the sake of everyone's privacy, including mine, I'm going to have to keep that secret. All I can say, it was a small town with a small population, which is probably why the whole thing wasn't plastered all over the news. But I'm paranoid, so that will just have to remain a mystery. For everyone suggesting I track down my friend that moved before I got back home, well, I'm kind of on the fence about that. Call me a coward, but I think I prefer to remember him as my childhood friend, without all the memories being tainted the way they are with all the others. If I went looking, I might not like what I find, and even though it's possible he changed too after being removed from such a toxic environment, I don't know. I just don't know. I guess I'd rather live with the ambiguity. For those of you wondering what I would have done in the situation if I'd never gone to that school, well, for obvious reasons, I can't really answer you. I'd like to think I would have stood up to them all the same, but my mind was seriously twisted back then, so I preferred to not think about that. For everyone questioning what I'm doing now, I'm studying aerospace engineering. I love planes, and through my course, I've gone to tour the underbelly of both planes and even some aircrafts that have been in space. I don't want to sound like a dork, but seeing all those components fit together and actually knowing how it all works and what everything's called and how to identify everything is seriously epic. I just hope I pass the course with a good enough grade to make a career out of it. If there's any other questions I missed, feel free to ask. Okay. Not going to read that last little bit. Like, you are a bit of an idiot. But also, it's just like, sweet revenge. Like, you took out your friends, basically got all knocked out by you without even throwing a punch. And, yeah, you could have handled things way better, but like, in your head, you thought you were doing things correctly, so you can't really blame teenage logic, can you? And also, good on him for protecting that girl. I'm going to end this final episode of r/NuclearRevenge here by saying links will be in the description to my main channel and also the second channel, along with links on the screen to the playlist and the last episode. Go check them out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the next video comes out. A ding, a ding. I'm the Mad Scientist. Mad Scientist out. I'll see you all in Supernova Revenge.